Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Chokeslam Wrestling Debate. Jeremy, Ryan, Malcolm, Richard, Harley, and we're not the Spirit Squad, but we're a lot more popular and over than they ever will be. So now that that's all out of the way, we're getting into this first semifinal match. Both of our contestants went through very impressive victories, and ironically, the other two judges that I have with me are the two players that played the two players that are playing right now. I don't know how that irony ever worked out, but be that as it may, so both of our players know what the rules are. It's the first of three. However, there are 4 main round questions, so all 4 main round questions may not be asked. However, if it is a 2-2 tie going after the 4 main round questions are asked, we will have 1 speed round question until we have 1 player to 3 points. And the winner of this match obviously will go on to the finals to determine who will become the first Chokeslam Wrestling Debate champion. So, needless to say, oh, and I also forgot, you have the 1-minute extension where you can use at any time during one of the debates at any point during either the opening or closing arguments, but you only get 1, so use it wisely. So without further ado, let's get into this first question between Harley Boric and Richard Schwartz. And this is a very interesting question. When I saw it, I was very curious to see what our 2 options would be from both of our players. In the WWE, we've had many great tag teams that have come through there, but there have also been some great tag teams that never did step foot in the WWE, WWF, whatever you wish to call it. So our first question is, what is the best team that never made it to the WWE? So we're going to start with Harley. So who's the team that you came up with for this question?
First, I'm just going to start off with, I don't like the wording of this question, the best team to never make it. Not everyone's ambitions and goals were to make it to WWE. So I'm taking it as the question of the team that never was in the WWE, because there's been WWE's never been really known as a tag team territory or a company. So that has played a great effect. But yeah, no, I've chosen one of the best teams ever. And yes, there's been different incarnations, but it's one of the few teams when you think of the teams of the 80s, and that's the Midnight Express, Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton, of course, managed by Bobby. James E. Cornette. Like, honestly, the teams that were not in the WWE, WWF at the time, it's the Midnights. I would have gone with the Rock and Rolls, but unfortunately they had a really crappy stint in '98, so it's the Midnight Express.
All right. I'm glad that Harley clarified that because I was going to mention that there are some reincarnations of the team that was mentioned, but that was brought up, so I don't have to bring it up myself. So, Richard, what is the team that you are going to use to combat with Harley's selection?
So the question is, which is the best tag team to ever make it into the WWE, WWF? And there have been many tag teams who've done well but never made it, but there's only been one tag team who not only revolutionized the tag team wrestling sport, but it was the one who revolutionized it, who became a 10-time WCW tag team champion, and that is Booker T and Stevie Ray, the Harlem Heat. These 2 brothers smelled excellence. They breathed excellence. When their theme song hit, you knew who you were talking about. You knew who was coming. The crowd went wild. And Harlem Heat is by far the best tag team to never make it into the WWE, WWF ring.
All right. I like both choices that were brought up. So without further ado, the 5-minute period will begin when the first person starts talking.
Well, Richard started off with mentioning that the Harlem Heat's been the 10-time WCW Tag Team Champions. Also, you can also throw in there 2 times as the Global Tag Team Champions, as Ebony and Ivory. Ebony Express. But my team, Dennis Condrey, Bobby Eaton, they were known as the most decorated team of all time, with a combined total throughout different promotions and territories that they worked and topped, 51 titles. And of course, a top team any territory that they entered, whether it be Mid-South, Jim Crockett, Bill Watts, old promotion. I'm stupidly drawing a blank on it right now.
Well, let me stop you right there, real quick. You're saying that they won so many titles. However, like you've already said in your opening statement, there have been so many reincarnations of the Midnight Express. And as of right now, the Midnight Express had like so many members. They had Randy Rose, Jack Victory, Neville Avian, Bombastic Bob. And like there's so many others.
No,
like,
let's not bring up the
no, here's the thing though, like you're saying they didn't have any ambitions to go to the WWE. That is totally not true. Anyone at the time we killed for a shot to be in the WWE, because that's where the money was, that's where the crowd was, and that's where it was to be.
They were making more than enough money. They were making $150,000 a year per competitor, whether it be Bobby or Dennis. And I'm only thinking when it comes to 51, I'm not adding in the other incarnations of it. This is just Bobby and Dennis specifically.
But the thing is, though, with the Midnight Express, when people think of the Midnight Express, they're not necessarily going to think of the two people you just mentioned. When people think of the Harlem Heat, they think of only Booker T and Stevie Ray.
Well, sometimes I think about Harlem Heat 2000 with Big T.
The one that lasted a few months.
But that was also in 2000, the most recent, and also the Harlem Heat. They were unfortunately, brother team that stuck around a lot, but they were always mid card. They were never main eventers. They were never top draws. Like when it comes in these promotions, whether it be like Mid-South, Jim Crockett and Bill Watts, they were the top. They were the top heel attraction, not a lone team attraction, and so many sellouts throughout the 3.5 years that Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey were together before Dennis Condrey left.
Okay. Harlem Heat also sold out rings, by the way, and they didn't need, and they were in the main event a couple times, and they didn't. And
were they ever the top draw? Were they ever main?
Absolutely, absolutely.
When?
Yes. I don't remember the exact date, but they have been. They have been in the main event for tag teams.
One main event, or
it doesn't really matter if they've been in the main event or not. They didn't need to be in the main event to draw crowds.
We're talking about the best team that not be in WWE, and
let's talk about the best team. Like the best team, Harlem Heat was by far the most superior of the Midnight Express, because unlike the Midnight Express, Harlem Heat have been inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame without having ever wrestled in the ring. Midnight Express has
Vince
not.
McMahon Sr.'s limo drivers in the WWE Hall of Fame. That doesn't really count. Coco Beware. No disrespect to Coco Beware, but you're not Hall of Fame quality.
I disagree completely.
Once again, mid Carter at best, except for in Memphis, where for a short time he was a main eventer to feud with Jerry Lawler. But it just also, you want to talk about Hall of Fame. So Midnight Express just this past year was inducted to the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Iowa. And of course, 10 years ago, they were first ballot Hall of Famers when it comes to the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame in 2009. And of course, in 85, 86, the Observer Hall of Fame, which is really respected and fan voted on, and unfortunately the WWE doesn't really matter too much when it comes to because they just pick names out of a hat who's going to be there, and of course they're the legendary feud.
All right, it was a good debate period. We're going to go to the closing arguments. I think it's pretty even right now. So Harley, whenever you're ready, your final closing argument will begin whenever you're ready.
Like I was saying, the Dennis Condrey and Bob Eaton, they're the team that was consistently to the longest from 84 to 87 for that 3-year period of the Midnight Express. Of course, the 2019 Hall of Famers and 2009 Wrestling Observer Hall of Famers, top heel attraction in every territory that they were in. No, yeah, like I said, top heel, not even top team. They were, of course, a top heel team, and of course, there was the legendary feuds with Rock and Rolls, and of course, you can't forget about the manager of the Midnight Express, Jim Cornette, but not really focusing on that. And of course, like the 51 different 51 championships that they've held, and all those territories that they were in, whether it be like Jim Crockett, Mid South. And Bell Watch, and sellouts. Like they were the reason for the sellouts. Harlem Heat was never a main event team. They were a good team. Like it just, but they were in WCW and a mid card team. I guess probably less than 5 main events. I'm sorry, like Midnight Express beats Harlem Heat when it comes to teams that have never been in WWE.
Okay. All right, Richard, whenever you're ready, you can begin with your closing argument.
Midnight Express may have 51 titles, but no one remembers the Midnight Express. Harlem Heat did not need to go moving around. They were in WCW. They were the 10-time WCW champions because they were the tag team. People know the Harlem Heat. People may not know the Midnight Express, or at least the 2 versions he's asking for. There have been so many renditions of the Midnight Express that you're not going to think of Bobby Heenan and Dennis. No. You might even think of the new Midnight Express, which was Bob Holly and Bart Gunn in the WWE, by the way, with Jim Cornette. Harlem Heat was the best tag team so much that WWE did recognize them to put him in the WWE Hall of Fame. Having so many titles does not mean you are the best tag team. It just means you just keep on moving to different wrestling branches all around the country. Harlem Heat did not need to do that because they were the tag team in WCW, the tag team that gave WWF the run for their money. Because when you think of WCW tag team champions, you think of the Harlem Heat. And that is why they're the best tag team champions to never been in the WWE ring.
All right. I like both arguments on both sides, but we're going to go to the judges. We're going to start with the person that's kind of running the show right now, even though it's technically me, but it's somebody else. We're going to go to Malcolm. Where do you stand on this debate?
Yeah, so I heard a lot about both these teams. I'm probably going to give the slight edge to Richard on this, because I think his point about the fact that people don't really remember Harlem Heat, nor Midnight Express that much, because they remember other incarnations than the incarnation that Harley was arguing for more before they figured that one. I think that Harley never seemed to recover from that point quite so well, so my point's going to go to Richard on this.
All right, I'll go next. The thing about about no one remembers the Midnight Express, I don't necessarily agree with that. I thought where Richard was going was when he was going to say no one remembers the 51 title reigns. That I would have completely agreed with. But saying that no one remembers the Midnight Express, I think that's more opinion based. I don't think you can really say that as a fact. So, you just kind of have to take that with a grain of salt as far as I'm concerned. To me, I think Harley did bring up a lot more about, obviously, the title reigns. They're not everything, but to have oodles and bajillions more than what Harlem Heat had, I think is a big bullet point there. And Richard, tried to dance around it a little bit, trying to bring up other things, but really wasn't really able to attack that main point of all the title reigns that they had. So, me personally, I'm going to give the point to Harley. So it's one apiece. It's going to come down to Ryan. Who do you side with on this argument?
Well, thanks a lot, Jeremy, for putting this on my shoulders. Well, I will look. Harley and Richard were definitely given their all, really trying to sell why Harlem Heat and the Midnight Express, at least the original Midnight Express, why they were the best teams. And Harley did straight out. I mean, he wanted to clarify immediately that he chose that version of the Midnight Express. So in my mind, when Richard kept bringing up the different versions of the Midnight Express after the original, I kind of disqualified that because Harley was mainly focusing on the original two. Those were the two men who chose not to go to the WWF. That being said, Richard, he really attacked Harley on this. He kept solidifying and reinforcing why Harlem Heat were a great team. Richard, if you had just brought up a few pay-per-views or maybe just something that Harlem Heat main evented, it would have strengthened your argument. And also, your point that having multiple championships doesn't qualify you as the best team, that in most wrestling is kind of a big deal. The fact that any team that goes to different businesses saying they're multi-time champions, it says, especially in the WWE, I mean, the fact that they keep saying Ric Flair's a 16-time champion, even though he's won more, but the fact that he's won multiple belts in different companies. But all that being said, Harley, you really were lagging in your argument a little bit. It looks like Richard, he just kept hammering down on you. And the fact that Richard kept staying on point, kept reinforcing with Harlem Heat is why I'm going to give him the point, because he was just being more consistent. He could have, this was a very close decision. There was just no like landslides here. You guys did great. It's just Richard, he stayed on point the most.
All right. So my fellow two judges have overthrown the host, and they're going to take over the show now. And I kind of found it a little bit interesting. So this next question I actually think is going to be pretty interesting also, because I think there was a lot of different options could have went on this one as well. The second question being, obviously, when you think of wrestling, you obviously got to think of feuds. There have been some great feuds in the history of wrestling, from Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, and everything from decades upon decades of wrestling. But the question that we were going to ask is, what feud in any wrestling company should have lasted longer than what it actually got? So this is, you can pretty much go anywhere on this. It's like the sky's the limit. So Richard, you went second in the first question, so you're going to lead off in this one. What is the choice, the feud that you have selected for this question?
See, this was a really hard, because there have been so many feuds that lasted forever. There were some feuds that weren't great, that lasted pretty quickly. But I chose a feud that could have been something great, could have been something amazing, which was The Miz versus John Morrison during the time when Miz was WWE champion. I was one of the few people that loved Miz as WWE champion. He, to me, one of my favorite WWE champions of like most recent generations. But the problem with The Miz was he was having like the matches for the title matches, like against Jerry the King Lawler, which kept on hurting his position as WWE champion. But one of the greatest matches that we had was on a Falls Count Anywhere, Monday Night Raw. It was The Miz versus John Morrison for the WWE Championship, Fall Count Nowhere. That was an amazing match. They had a feud for a few more, like a month, but it wasn't long enough. This feud could have not only strengthened John Morrison's position in the company, strengthened The Miz in the WWE Championship, but also would have made such a much better WrestleMania the following year with Miz versus John Cena. So my feud I'm picking is Miz versus John Morrison when Miz was WWE champion.
All right, good selection from Richard's part. Let's see what Harley has to pick to counter with that debate.
Well, when you think of feuds, like sometimes you need the longevity, and sometimes they just end really quickly. And unfortunately, that has been the story of Kofi Kingston's title reign so far. But like the one that out of his recent opponents, Samoa Joe, I'm choosing Samoa Joe and Kofi Kingston, is the fact that it didn't last long enough. And it's honestly, Joe and Kingston, their first match was good. And I want to see more of it. It just like, and unfortunately, it just goes and it's done with. And it just, there was a beginning. It got to the middle part and just stopped right there. Unfortunately, now Joe's feuding with Roman. So I just wish that feud would continue.
All right, we have one that's present era of WWE, and we got one that's kind of taken place several years down the line. So it's going to be interesting how both of our players are going to debate this one. So whenever both players are ready, the 5 minutes will begin.
Let's see. I will just say real quick. I mean, the Kofi Samoa Joe feud was fun. It was great, and it doesn't mean that their feud is over. It just means it's taking a break. So you don't know what's going to come down the line in the few months or so. But like the problem with Samoa Joe and Kofi Kingston's feud is, though I love Kofi Kingston as WWE champion, but Samoa Joe is just, he outclasses him in the ring and in the mic, and it's going to hurt more of the fact of Samoa Joe, his stats in WWE if he loses someone to Kofi Kingston. Even though Kofi's doing okay as a champion right now, he's no Brock Lesnar, he's no AJ Styles yet. And right now, I think Kofi just needs to prove himself a little bit more before we get this feud again.
That's true to a point, but right now, it's also, you can afford to have Joe defeat Kofi and have a little bit of a back and forth there, maybe switching the belt back once or twice between each other with the matches there. It just, you just need to continue. It just needs to really continue, which as we can tell right now, it's not necessarily going to continue because Joe's in a program with Roman Reigns right now. I really wish that would happen. Just like when it comes to Miz and Morrison, you are right on one thing, that feud really made both people, but it was a feud that was pretty much set in stone. You mentioned that Falls Count Anywhere match, like it really wasn't going. There wasn't really too much more to go with. There wasn't going to be any like trading back and forth the title or anything like that because John Morrison had already decided not to resign his contract, and his contract was up later that year in November. And his final match in the WWE was against Miz. Miz defeated him, but it was just,
here's the thing.
Their feud lasted 2 years with a good beginning. The beginning was them as a team. The inciting incident is when they broke up, when John Morrison was drafted to Raw, I believe it was, or one of them was drafted to, it was Morrison, and Miz turned on Morrison, which led to their actually feud between each other, and it lasted for 2 years.
Well, here's the thing though, when they split branches, when you talk about when the draft happened, they were in different branches, so they didn't get to wrestle each other. And they had a few feuds here and there, but it wasn't strong enough. And you're talking about the fact that he didn't re-up his contract for November. If John Morrison knew what they were planning, if they were going to push him for more of a feud with Miz, build him up towards a possible championship win, because by the time, you never know what could have happened.
Also, at that time, though, Miz was no longer the champion.
Well, I'm talking about the feud during the champion, though. So I'm not talking about when he was the champion.
Yeah, but we already saw what the plans were. Like they were hyping up Miz for Cena and Rockmania. Like
I know exactly the best way to have done that though is to have the constant feud with John Morrison and the Miz, because we had that Jerry Lawler feud with the Miz for far too long, and that just hurt him as the champion. Like how Miz struggling against Jerry the King Lawler is supposed to defeat John Cena at WrestleMania. If you would have the solid match with Miz versus John Cena in a few months, like we did in that Falls Count Anywhere, and we had another steel cage match, triple threat with them, that would have solidified Miz as a championship reign. That would have made him a strong champion. It would have made him a believable champion for Miz to defeat John Cena at that following WrestleMania, where we didn't even need to have The Rock, because that WrestleMania match was very iffy.
They would have had, the matches would have been good, but John Morrison was never considered a top enough guy or an important enough guy to be a setup guy for The Rock or anything like that. The Jerry Lawler match and feud for that point there had the emotional attachment to it and all that. It did make sense, and it gave people hope that one last great Jerry the King Lawler match against The Miz. And it was a huge hope spot that worked for him, and it led to that. It just, like I said, the John Morrison and the Miz feud program itself, because you gotta go from start, which them being a team, a really good team they both started from the beginning, rose up, and became a really important team for 2 years, I believe it was, and then of course you needed to break it up, and then there was a beginning, a middle, and an end with the feud, though. So we're sending Morrison goodbye at the end.
All right, so we're going to go into the closing arguments. We started with Richard, so we'll start with you for the closings. Whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
You're starting with me, right? Just clarifying. Okay. The problem with Kofi and Samoa Joe is right now Kofi cannot handle Samoa Joe in the ring. Kofi's okay on the mic. He's decent in the ring, but Samoa Joe's just on another level with the mic and the ring skills. He took on the likes of Brock Lesnar, AJ Styles, John Cena. He's in another class, and right now Kofi's just not ready for this feud with Samoa Joe. Or if they were to continue this feud right now, this would only hurt Samoa Joe instead of benefiting both. Whereas Miz versus John Morrison, if they would have kept on with this feud while Miz was WWE champion, it would have benefited both individuals. It would have gave John Morrison a reason to stick in the WWE. It would have gave him a better position in the WWE where he might be champion one day. And it would also solidify Miz as WWE champion, and we would have had a lot better WrestleMania match against John Cena. Kofi and Samoa Joe, their feud was fun, and you don't know, like a few more months, they can go back to the feud. It's still early for them. But I'm talking about a feud that would have benefited both superstars at that time, whereas one that could benefit them one day. So the best feud that needed to go longer was The Miz versus John Morrison when Miz was the WWE champion.
All right, good closing by Richard. Let's see what Harley has to do. What Harley has as a counter closing.
Yeah, you're talking a lot about a feud that could go on longer. Like I said, the whole John Morrison and the Miz, the whole Miz versus the Miz and John Morrison story lasted about 4 years. If the WWE couldn't do anything within that 4 years to actually do that, I'm sorry, but it did have finished when the Miz defeated Morrison and sent him packing and sent him out of the WWE. With Kofi, you brought up a lot of points. With Joe is this tippy top guy. He just needs this an actual long-term world title feud where it can actually, instead of having, okay, we'll just pick him up and we'll use him whenever we need him. This way here, you can make him a top badass heel that as much as I love Brock Lesnar, Samoa Joe will be there all the time to actually be that badass heel. And a feud with Kofi, they do when it comes to mic and ring skills in different ways, but they're both good in their own way. They're at the same level in different ways, but the same level when it comes to promo and charisma and in ring. I would love to see a prolonged feud. You say it might happen, but it's WWE nowadays. You never know. And it's Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe's had several years where it's been one-offs. He needs an actual world title feud that would actually mean something and make him a true main eventer.
So let's go to the judges. Let's start with Ryan, since we went to you last on the first question. Let's start with you on your take on this one.
Well, I'm going to be much shorter here. At least I won't drag on. Each feud did make a good point, especially with Harley, how he does talk about that Samoa Joe. He is being plopped around in different feuds, just like he's cherry-picked by the system. And no matter what feud he in, Samoa Joe always comes off as a badass, so it wouldn't hurt him as much. And Richard, he did do a good job in stressing on Miz and Morrison's past, how their feud would have solidified him much better, how the point of his feud with Jerry Lawler did hurt him. But Harley did counter that ultimately the plan was Miz and Cena at WrestleMania. But the funny thing was, in the debate round, they talked more on Richard's feud instead of having some back and forth. They did that in their closing segments, but since the focus mainly turned to Richard's feud, it did take away a few points on him not trying to get the focus back onto Harley. And ultimately, right now, as it seems the direction, I'm going to be leaning towards Harley on this one. mainly because Harley was able to at least keep the focus on Richard's feud, so it did save him points on having to trying to find weaknesses in his until they're closing. So I'm going to Harley.
All right. So Harley's got one side. Let's go to Malcolm. Let's see if you agree with Ryan's take.
Yeah, I'm on the other side there. I'm going to go slightly Richard on this. And it's for the same reason that Ryan kind of brought up, but in reverse. Because the fact that they kept it on Richard's feuds so much, it means Harley didn't didn't have a chance to get as many more points about his own run in there. And because they were just discussing Richards, and I think that kind of negates the negatives that that anyone may have had for Harley's feud. But so yeah, I think keeping it just centered on Richards' feud for a lot of that main round battle kind of hurt Harley a little bit because they weren't talking about he didn't get much points about his own run in there.
Okay, so it comes down to me. Both of our judges kind of used the same argument and went in completely different ways. So I was kind of on the fence about that because I noticed that too. They were both kind of focusing more on Miz and Morrison's side, but I kind of leaned a little more on Ryan's end was because of that. There were more bullet shots being hit on Richard's choice. And I think Harley was aware of that and used her closing argument very effectively and used up the fact that technically the Miz Morrison feud that didn't last very long technically did last 4 years. It was a 4-year feud, even though they didn't have legitimate matches and all. It was still something that played out throughout a fairly long period of time. And that was actually a pretty interesting point that I hadn't even thought of until I actually, realized that was actually the case. So it was not by much because I did agree with Ryan's fact that they didn't, Harley didn't really build up, her choice of Samoa Joe, Kofi that much. But that also meant there were no bullet shots being used that much to shoot it down, other than the case of, well, it's still going on. It could, but at the same time, we don't know it is. It's a little more opinion based. It's not really fact based. So I liked Harley's closing argument. It really won me over at the end. So I'm going to give the point to Harley there. So that's going to tie it up at 1 apiece. So very interesting debate. All right, so we're going to get into question 3. This is another interesting one. Kind of more because, unlike the previous question where you had oodles upon oodles of choices, there's really not that many to choose from in here, but it's still a very highly debatable question. There's not been very many WrestleManias that have not had a world title match main event. In fact, off the top of my head, I believe it's 6 off the top of my head. 1, 8, 11, 26, 33, and there's another one in there. I'm pretty sure that's not also. Oh well, that's 5 off the top of my head. So I know there's one more off the top of my head. The Rock Cena, the first Rock Cena match. So that was so that's 6. So out of those 6, we're gonna ask which WrestleMania was the best WrestleMania that did not have a world title match main event the show. So we're going to go back to Harley, starting off this one. Which WrestleMania did you choose that did not have a world title main event?
Well, for me, the WrestleMania that I chose was WrestleMania that you just have to kind of look at the match card and what produced some of the best matches out of the limited options. Fortunately, with the limited options, a lot of the WrestleManias weren't that good. But just like with mine, I went with one that started off the show really hot with AJ Styles versus Shane McMahon. You had the Kevin Owens Chris Jericho feud. You had a good women's 4-way match with Bayley, Charlotte, Nia, and Sasha Banks. And of course, you had the return of the Hardy Boys, like doing surprisingly doing back-to-back nights of ladder matches after just having an awesome ladder match with the Young Bucks and ROH the night before. The return of the Hardy Boys in the four-way ladder match for the tag titles, which also featured Luke Gallows, Anderson, Cesaro, and Sheamus. Like, hell, even John Cena with Nikki Belly. Nikki Bella against Ms. Maurice, which surprisingly wasn't that bad. Seth Rollins Triple H was okay. Okay, we're not talking about the next match because let's not get into that. And of course, a really well built up and actually short, but it needed to be short. Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg for the title. And of course, Roman Reigns defeated Undertaker in a holds barred match to become the dog that runs the yard. It's WrestleMania 33. It had several good matches on there, and you got to go by match quality for the best WrestleMania that was in main event by a world title. And even the storylines going into it meant it was a combination of several of them. It was a WrestleMania that actually had a bit of finality to it.
All right. So WrestleMania 33, I believe, was yes, 33.
It was.
All right. So 33 for Harley. What WrestleMania will Richard choose as the best WrestleMania that did not have a world title main event?
See, this was really hard, trying to find a WrestleMania without a world title as the main event. But I did find one, and I found a really great one. It was WrestleMania 26, Phoenix, Arizona. My card started off with a Battle Royal. Battle Royals are always fun and great. Yoshi Tatsu won that one. It had Show Miz versus John Morrison for R-Truth for the tag team belts. It had the triple threat Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase, which that was technically a 2-on-1, but it was still a fantastic triple threat match. It was a great match. You had, of course, a great Money in the Banks. Money in the Banks are always great. And that so happened. Jack Swagger won the Money in the Bank, but it had some great competitors in that. You also had Triple H versus Sheamus, which was a great match in itself. You had Rey Mysterio versus CM Punk, which was a great match. You had Bret the Hitman Hart versus Mr. McMahon. First time Bret was in the WWE ring since the Montreal Screwjob. You also had Chris Jericho versus Edge for the world title. You had, again, the next one was kind of crappy. It was the 10 Diva Battle Royal match, but, Harley has one bad matches. No WrestleMania card will anywhere be perfect. You had John Cena versus Batista in a great submissions match for the WWE title. And the main event, by far, one of the best main event matches of WrestleMania. It was Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, the streak versus the career match, and that was a no DQ match. There is no comparison when it comes to WrestleManias. WrestleMania 26 is the best WrestleMania to not feature a world title as their main event.
All right, good openings by both sides. We have 26 versus 33, so the 5 minutes will begin when the first person starts talking.
Question, Richard, do you actually remember the Bret Hart Vince McMahon match?
I absolutely do.
You know that was absolutely horrendous because Bret Hart legally, due to his Lloyd's of London insurance, couldn't do anything at all during the match. It was just a cluster F. That's why my other match, the match that I'll equally that with, is the Bray Wyatt Randy Orton match. That's the one bad match on the entire card. You want to mention that I didn't know we were talking about kickoffs. The kickoffs are Sunday Night Heat or stuff like that with your Battle Royal. I'll raise that with Austin Aries versus Adrian Neville for the Cruiserweight title. That was one of the best matches that year in WWE.
Here's the thing when you talk about the Bret Hart match. It wasn't necessarily the best match thing, but the level of emotions that went through that match. This was Bret Hart coming into a WWE ring ever since the Montreal Screwjob. It was the moment. It was the feud between Bret Hart getting his revenge on Vince McMahon. No, you got some time to talk. It's time for me to talk a little bit.
No, I can debate though. I can. Yeah, no, that's unfortunately they had everything, but WWE does what they unfortunately nowadays are knowing what to do best. They screwed it up 2 weeks beforehand with getting Bret Hart hit by a car, and of course, like you got hit by a car, you're going to wrestle 2 weeks later.
And here's the thing: you're talking about the Undertaker versus Roman Reigns. That was one of the worst main event WrestleMania matches of all time.
I'll give you credit.
First of all, it did it. We all knew Roman was going to beat the Undertaker. First of all, one, because his streak was already broken. There was no invest for the Undertaker. It was just him just wrestling again. The streak has already been broken by Brock Lesnar.
Okay, but we're not based on the main events. Your main event in that match.
It was great. It wasn't just good.
The Undertaker Shawn Michaels match the year before was better.
I disagree with that.
Really? Okay, we would agree to disagree on that.
And you're talking about the Austin Aries and the Cruiserweight match. Unfortunately, it was a fun match. But the problem is the fans were not invested in that Cruiserweight match. They haven't been invested in Cruiserweight. That's why the Cruiserweights have been dead.
I didn't know we were talking about the kickoff, so I just thought, or like the Sunday Night Heats or whatever.
It's part of the WrestleMania.
Okay, yeah. Okay, then you got I'll top you with Mojo Rawley being joined by Gronkowski, winning his Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and then also like my matches: AJ Styles, Shane McMahon, Kevin Owens, Chris Jericho, the 4-way women's match, the Hardy Boys.
I had Chris Jericho versus Edge. Chris Jericho versus Edge was a far better match than the Kevin Owens Chris Jericho match.
No, I gotta disagree.
Your John Cena Nikki Bella's match was fine, but Nikki Bella can't wrestle for crap. So every time she got in the ring, it looked terrible.
Well, the same with
Ray versus Punk
Murray's
was a great match.
But if you actually look match by match and actually think about those matches and how they happen, and even the storylines going into it, hell, the Randy Orton Bray Wyatt, the match was god awful, but the storyline going into it was good.
You know what's not awful? The Randy Orton versus Ted DiBiase versus Cody Rhodes match, that was a fantastic match.
No, it was good halfway there. Then it became the usual cluster with
really, because the crowd in the WrestleMania seemed to be really into it.
That are supposed to get along. Oh my God, they collide and they don't get along anymore. And Orton capitalizes that with the punt on Cody and the RKO to Ted. And Jack Swagger, and like your ladder match.
Here's the thing: it was only a couple years ago, and people forgotten that WrestleMania already. No one's forgotten the Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels match or the Randy Orton versus Ted DiBiase, Cody Rhodes. Everyone loves. Everyone knows.
I don't think you can use that people remember that triple threat match. I'm sorry. No, like if anything, you remember that Jack Swagger struggling to get the briefcase from in the Money in the Bank.
But like it was still a Money in the Bank match. It had Shelton Benjamin. It had Dolph Ziggler. It had Drew McIntyre. It had Matt Hardy. It had some great people. Sometimes bad people, don't win.
The Bank, and a lot of times, especially if you look at that time period and those people in there, a lot of it.
All right, so I liked both arguments so far. This is pretty close to me. They've really stepped up. They've fought for what they believe in, which is what obviously both players should do. But this closing argument, I think, will be very important to determine who gets the point here. So we're going to start with Harley. Whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
In all honesty, my WrestleMania, pretty much every match was okay, with the exception of one match. Every match was okay to pretty good and memorable. Richard wants to bring up memorability. Hardy Boys returning and winning the tag titles. Seth Rollins, Triple H, where Seth Rollins becomes the Kingslayer, and after that lengthy feud that after Triple H turned on Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, like you have these the feud like everything, like that match was short, but it was good. It was a good Brock Lesnar Goldberg match. There were, just like I said, several. My matches were good. Unfortunately, WrestleMania 26, the main event was really good, but it's still a one match card, and you can't. For the most part, it's a one match card. You can't really say best WrestleMania with a one match card from top to bottom. My WrestleMania 33 was, for the most part, 2 thumbs up. Unfortunately, it's just the main event, and like I said, it's the WrestleMania before. When it comes to Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, that's the one that I remember, and you just got to go with WrestleMania 33 match wise and storyline wise.
All right, Richard, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
I'm using my 1 minute closing extra.
All right, go ahead.
You're saying it's my card only has a one match card. That is so wrong. First of all, your match, you even said your match was just okay, except for one. When it's best WrestleMania, you don't want just okay matches. The Battle Royal was a great match. People love Battle Royals. You have the Money in the Bank. It was a great Money in the Bank, depending on who cares. Jack Swagger won, and he was a fun champion for a little bit. But that match itself was exciting. You had the ladders. You had Shelton Benjamin doing great. You had Kofi Kingston doing amazing in that match. You had Bret Hart coming back since the Montreal Screwjob, taking on Vince McMahon. Maybe Bret Hart was a little out of his prime, but it's the intensity, the emotional things that we saw in that match, where we got to see Bret Hart get his revenge on Vince McMahon. The whole Hart family getting his revenge on Vince McMahon for the Montreal Screwjob, which was one of the most turning moments in what made the Attitude Era, was that position. You also had the greatest Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, no DQ, streak versus career. And first of all, Undertaker's streak was not broken. And if anyone could have broken that streak, it was Shawn Michaels. And there was no guarantee Shawn Michaels was going to retire, because he was still working in his prime. He was still doing great things. Ric Flair kept on wrestling way past his prime. You also had a great match, John Cena versus Batista in submissions match. You had Edge versus Chris Jericho. That was a fantastic match. Triple H versus Sheamus was a fantastic match. Rey Mysterio versus CM Punk was a great match. Harley's main event was so boring. Undertaker was past his prime. There were so many botches. Undertaker got exhausted. Roman Reigns was not Shawn Michaels. He could not carry Undertaker for a self-sustaining match, and the streak was already broken. So there was no interest in this match. Talk about Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens. It was an okay match, but it wasn't nearly as good as the Chris Jericho versus Edge. Shane versus AJ Styles was a great match. I'll give you that. But the problem is, we've seen the same stuff from Shane in never-ending matches before. It was a fun match. And you're saying you only have one bad match? The Raw tag team match was okay. You can tell, though, that when they did the SmackDown tag team titles, the SmackDown women's match, they cared more about the Raw team than they did about the SmackDown, because the SmackDown match was not great. If you're talking about it's the best WrestleMania without a title, it's about memorable moments, the emotion level, and that is WrestleMania 26, Phoenix, Arizona, career versus the streak.
Time. All right, so good back and forth match on this one. I'm interested to see what our judges have to say about this. We're going to start with we're going to go back to Malcolm on this one. Where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one because it's just so close that it's just so close to call. I'm going to go slightly towards Richard on here because it was one of those ones which I was leaning, though in my mind I was going back and forth. It's like, that's a good point. Well, no, that's an even better point. But I think for me, Richard kind of clinched it in his closing by just hitting back sort of that he talked about how all his matches were great. Now a lot of Harley's matches, kind of the storyline might have been great, but the payoff to those storylines weren't. And I might be misremembering things, but I'm going to go slightly towards Richard on this.
All right, let's go to Ryan next. Where do you stand on this one?
I It's really hard to decide. These guys they picked two great pay-per-views, honestly. Oh my God. Oh. Yeah, I mean, one thing we can definitely agree on is that WrestleMania has too many matches on their pay-per-view, so it does make this hard. But I'm gonna, just like with Malcolm going opposite on me on the last round, I'm going to go opposite here. My point would be towards Harley, because when Harley does talk about the match, like the storyline elements, they did help sell with some of the matches, especially with Cena and Nikki versus Miz and Maurice. The storyline and promos from that match helped build their match to where people were surprised on how well it turned out. Same goes with AJ and Shane. Also, Jericho and Owens, they also had a great storyline going into WrestleMania 33 as well. I mean, everyone remembers the build-up, the aftermath of the Festival of Friendship. WrestleMania 26, it definitely had some great builds. I mean, Michaels, Undertaker the Streak, Vince and Brett. I mean, the rivalry between Batista and Cena that led to their submission match. The one thing they definitely did focus on was Randy Orton, because in both there were definitely two differences here with 33 and 26. With 26, this was just more of Orton being dominant over a faction that he broke up. But in this one, it's the same thing, but the difference is he's gone for the title. So, I mean, with just those slight differences, I'm going to go with Harley.
All right. I'm sensing a trend here. None of the judges appear to agree with one another on this. So
it ain't always gonna be unanimous.
I agree. The one thing I will agree with our judges is that this was a tough one. I liked the fact that Harley did bring up the fact that Bret Hart, Mr. McMahon, did kind of suck, which I've been on record. I think it's the worst WrestleMania match of all time, but it's not about what I think. Richard didn't really ever try to counter that. He never really said it was good. He just said it had a memorable moment, but kind of memorable for all the wrong reasons. But Harley never did bring up the fact that, they did the stupid swerve job where the family came out there and they were supposed to be siding with McMahon. And then, of course, the big swerve. No, they just took your money. They never sided with you. It was like who literally wrote that? Like, that's like the dumbest thing. That is like Stephanie's writing team. That's all I got to say about that. But Harley did bring up a couple more things. She brought up, the Jack Swagger ladder, botch at the very end, which obviously was so bad that they cut it out all the DVD releases. So if you never saw it live, you would have no idea what happened.
I think it's still YouTube.
No, yeah. Who uses YouTube now? Come on now. Hangouts is dead. No one uses YouTube anymore. So, it was really close, but I liked the fact that Harley built up her card a little bit more than Richard did on his side. Just the quality of matches, I think, really just won it over for me in the end. So it was really tough, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Harley on this. Really could have gone either way, but it was I just liked a little bit more of what Harley brought to the table in there, and I think there was a couple key points that Richard didn't quite, counter back enough in his closing. He came really close, but I just don't think he was quite there. So Harley takes a 2-1 lead after that question. That was a really good debate, though. All right, so we go to the fourth question. Obviously, if Harley gets the point on this one, it will be game, set, and match. However, if Richard gets the point, we will go to our tiebreaker speed round. So this is an interesting one. The question is, what heel superstar would be best suited as a babyface? I saw the choices that both of our players gave, and this is going to be interesting. I'm really curious to see where they're going to go with this. So, Richard, we're going to start with you on this one. Whenever you're ready, who is your choice?
This is one of the hardest questions we had to do, trying to find, because every heel has at least been a face for an equal set of time. But I chose a heel that has made the fans go wild, fan participation, has the great promo mic work, great ring ability. The fans are always with him, even when he is a heel, and I chose Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt would be an amazing face. He has the Undertaker / Boogeyman creepy vibe feel, and that would just be an exciting thing. The fans are loving his new gimmick right now. They loved his first gimmick when he came in, when they went pitch black, when they brought on their cell phones for participation. He has the charisma, the personality, the ring ability to drive the heels wild, to make some fantastic matches. So that's why my choice for heel going face would be Bray Wyatt.
Interesting choice by Richard. Let's hear what the interesting choice that Harley picked for hers.
For my pick, I went with someone who, in all honesty, he for a very short period of time in 2003, like I think it was like a total of 2 months, and yeah, he was just too new for it. It's who when he was face for a very, very short time, which I don't think disqualifies him from this question, is at the time the next big thing, or the Conqueror, Brock Lesnar. Like, this is a guy who is just a powerhouse, badass. You just see him, you run away, but you love to see him just destroy people, and that's what he's best at. And it just, but he has used it to pretty much spend his entire career as a heel. And like I said, it's Brock Lesnar.
All right, so Bray Wyatt and Brock Lesnar, definitely not the two choices that I would have thought of, but it's our player's choice. That's what they chose to go with. So I'm really curious to see what they're going to debate for this. So the 5 minutes will begin when the first person begins speaking.
There is a reason why Brock Lesnar was only a face for a short time, because he was not good at it. He's not good at the mic. That's why he has Paul Heyman with him. Every time he smiles, has some quirky, he comes off as an asshole or a douchebag. He can't play a face. It's not possible. He's not good enough. The people hate him right now. He did, like I said, no mic skills. He always comes off as a douche. Even when he was in UFC, people did not like him. He always comes off cocky. Even his smile, when he tries to be nice, he comes off cocky. It doesn't work.
People didn't like him for a good period of time. The highest draw, the biggest buy rates, and no mic skills. Go back and watch this UFC 100 post-match promo. And let's hope you don't work for
Again,
Boric.
even that promo wasn't great. It was him being a douchebag. And that's more of a reason why he's a heel, not a face.
Yeah, but he's definitely
Bray Wyatt
one of those.
Is likable. The fans love him whether he's a face or a heel. Fan participation with the cell phones. He has that personality where the face of his creepiness can work as a face and a heel. He's just a way better person to become a face than Brock Lesnar is. Brock Lesnar is just this big dude who's destruction.
It's just like, yes, Bray Wyatt is probably at best could be a tweener. Just I don't see how, like, having him, he could have the crowd support, but it just still be a bad guy. Just like
you were bringing up your WrestleMania when Randy Orton beat Bray Wyatt. A lot of people were mad about that match because they loved the fact Bray Wyatt was champion. He only got to be champion for a short time. And that's how much the fans hated him. And he was supposed to be a heel.
That was that from day one, that feud was built up horrendously. That and the match itself with the screen on the mat there, like, that did not do anyone any favors. And just, yeah.
To be a babyface, you have to have likability. You have to have the fans on your side. And Brock Lesnar does not have likability right now. He does not have the fan side. People are sick of Brock Lesnar. They want him to leave.
That's WWE's doing right there. Yeah, Brock Lesnar.
And he's way better with Paul Heyman talking.
Yes.
There's a reason why Paul Heyman doesn't talk.
No. Like, Paul Heyman is part of the package, just as he would be if he's a heel. Just because, but Paul Heyman also has people he's able to have people drink the Kool-Aid, especially the fans. And even with fans drink the Kool-Aid.
And even you have Paul Heyman on Brock Lesnar's side, Paul Heyman can't be a face either. He's not that likable either. Every time he tries to be a face, he comes out as a douche as well. Paul Heyman is the better heel, just like Brock Lesnar is the better heel. There is no way you can make Brock Lesnar likable. It's why his face turn only lasted a couple months and why he eventually turned on that.
That was because he was way too green, especially at that time. Like, he had no idea. And in all honesty, promo skills, like, you don't necessarily have to be the best promos to be likability. Like, when the short times that Brock Lesnar speaks, you listen, and it's awesome. Just listen to him scream.
It doesn't matter if he screams. People still boo the hell out of him. And he barely says a few things. Like I said, he's not great on the mic. Even when in UFC, when you talk about that promo, it's still him becoming a dick.
When it comes to crowd support, in all honesty, when it comes to crowd support, like, you see Brock Lesnar just, like, everyone loves him when he just.
People were cheering Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar because they rather have Roman Reigns win against Brock Lesnar than have Brock Lesnar.
When was that?
Be a champion. The last WrestleMania. The recent WrestleMania was Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. They were cheering more of Roman than they were of Brock. And they can't stand Roman either.
Well, unfortunately, that's the WWE damage doing it with Brock Lesnar doesn't want to show up. Oh wait,
going to Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt
backstage bullshit.
Definitely has the charisma. He has the creepiness. People love the Undertaker. People even love the Boogeyman. You have them together. That type of creepiness and saying you can do so much fun. You can have Bray Wyatt take on Brock Lesnar, do all that creepy things, get Brock Lesnar super mad, and have a great match where you have all the people going at it, and we're doing these creepy things, and the fans going nuts. Especially with his new gimmick with the Playhouse thing, people are loving it.
Yeah. So does that mean that he's already a face then? Like, it's just like I said.
No, he's still technically a heel.
Bray Wyatt's a career tweener, unfortunately.
And Brock Lesnar is just someone who's hated.
All right. So this interesting debate has lived up to everything that I thought it would. We're going to go to the closing arguments. We're going to start with Richard. Whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Look, Harley says Bray Wyatt can be a tweener. Whatever, he is a face. People love Bray Wyatt, whether he's a face, whether he's a heel. People love the gimmicks he does. People love the new Playhouse gimmicks. When you think of someone who is a face, they have to have good mics. They need the fans on their side. They need someone who can fight for the people. And that is Bray Wyatt, using all the creepiness that Bray does and just makes the crowd go wild. Brock Lesnar is a one-trick pony. He is only good at being a heel. He's the big dude. He's the people you love to hate and hate because you hate him all the freaking way. He tried being a face for like 3 months and the fans were not on his side. People were not loving it. Whenever he tries to be likable, he just comes off looking like a dick, sounding like a dick. UFC, he played the heel for most of the UFC, or practically all the UFC, because Brock Lesnar is just a big dude, especially with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman can only be a heel. You can say, oh, he's big in destruction. Braun Strowman's the only one who's a big dude. Even the Big Show have better face possibilities than Brock Lesnar. There's just no way you can make Brock Lesnar a face. Not now, not ever, because he does not have the mic skills. He does not have the charisma. He cannot get the fans on his side because he comes off too much as a douche. Bray Wyatt is lovable. He is a fighter. People are digging his stuff, his charisma, his ego, whether he's a face or heel. The fans are always on the side. People loved when he was champion, and we're going to see him be a face probably again really soon, and fans are going to be going nuts. Bray Wyatt is the best heel to go face right now.
All right. Go ahead, Harley.
When it comes to Bray Wyatt, the fans before he changed his gimmick, by the end of it, it was something you did when Bray Wyatt's entrance happened. You held up your cell phone like that just to be part of it. And he really didn't have the crowd support behind him the last couple of years as Bray Wyatt of the Wyatt family. It was a stale gimmick that ran its course. All of his feuds had a beginning and middle. His promos had a beginning and middle. No end. There was I don't recall any ends to anything like that. And it's just like I said, Bray Wyatt it is what it is. He's, like I said, a career tweener. Like, you talk about his creepiness and everything like that. Yeah, you can't really truly make that like a baby face, and especially with the new gimmick, it just an evil clown, evil masked clown. Bray Wyatt, like the. But Brock Lesnar, you talk about I've always been a huge fan of his, and I've just love to see him. Just he's there. Someone's going to get, as Mark Henry's song goes, someone's going to get their ass kicked. Oh, like, yeah, of course you got to throw Paul Heyman in there. Brock Lesnar is good in promos in short bursts, and it's just like hell. He's a lovable douchebag.
All right, that's the end of the this question. I'm going to go ahead and lead off with this one. I like where both of them were going on this. Ultimately, I think the one key point that just kept getting brought up over and over again was Richard just bringing up the fact that Lesnar's a douche, and in this day and age, it's just really hard for fans, especially with the WWE era where you got the kids and all that. It's just really hard for fans to fall in love with a douche like of that epic proportion. And Harley kind of tried to skate around it, but to me, never really fully countered it. So that, and the fact that Heyman and the mic piece, and he's about as big as of a dick as Brock was, is really just not real. It was just too much there to ignore. So me personally, I'm going to go with Richard on this one. So let's go to Ryan. Ryan, where do you stand on this?
I'm going to be honest. This is not going to be an opposite. Richard gets the point, mainly because Richard talked about more how he brought up more elements on why Bray Wyatt would be good as a face, his charisma, his promos as well, and also to mention that there was a time when he partnered with Hardy when Matt was doing his local gimmick. They were slightly a face team. I mean, sure, he didn't do a lot of promos with Matt, but they were face. They were cheered by the crowd, and also even after the whole cell phone thing, Wyatt still kept getting that momentum with the people. When the first time they teased Wyatt against Brock before it became Roman versus Brock at WrestleMania 32, the people went crazy when Wyatt was face-to-face with Brock. And Harley, if you had given more examples of lovable douches, like how Kevin Owens, The Miz were douches, even Randy Orton in his early career before he was portrayed by Evolution was sort of a douche, but only in certain promos he was kind of that way. If Harley had just brought up some more examples of guys who were like dicks, who seemed more like heels, but could be treated as faces, it would have given more of a balance in his arguments against Richard. But Richard pretty much had a full set here. He had pretty much almost any base covered with Wyatt. So my point goes to Richard.
All right. So hallelujah. We have unison here. Okay, so we've got a tie ball game going into this final question. So how this is going to work, it's going to be your typical speed round. We're going to do 3 separate debate periods. It's going to be 20 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. I'm going to ask one question. Whenever you think you know what the correct answer or the best answer is, say it. Whoever says it first will get first crack at their debate, and we'll just alternate back and forth 3 debate periods. Okay, this final speed round question, no pressure, but the winner goes to the finals of this tournament. So yeah, no pressure whatsoever. The question is, what is the best wrestling catchphrase that is 2 words or fewer?
Yes.
Hell yeah. Steve Austin's hell yeah.
All right. So kind of similar answers. We'll see where this goes.
Similar but different in a lot of ways.
I mean, there was a lot of good ones out there. You had You're Next, Suck It, a lot of good ones out there. And Harley just well, Richard, you said your answer first. Give your take. Your first 20 seconds will begin. Why is yes the best 2-word or fewer catchphrase out there?
Daniel Bryan's yes chant yes started the yes movement, which revolutionized Daniel Bryan's career, and it involved the whole WWE universe. That whole yes chant put everything on Daniel Bryan, gave the underdog a fighting chance, finally got noticed to become WWE champions. Everyone's still saying yes today. Yes has been so powerful.
All right. Harley, whenever you're ready. Your 20 seconds begin.
Okay. Oh, like you just in the 90s, one of the things you heard, and you as soon as Austin said, "Oh hell yeah," just hell yeah alone, just when answering questions, just getting the crowd to cheer, like for a two-word or less catchphrase, hell yeah, would have millions of people.
I just realized 20 seconds isn't really that long. I'd really make a case for it, but that's why we got 3 debate periods and not 2. So your second 20 seconds. Now this is when you can start bantering back and forth about each other's picks. Richard, we'll go back to you. Your 20 seconds will begin whenever you're ready.
The problem with hell yeah is, though it was great at the time, it got replaced with Stone Cold's what, and that is what you've known for Stone Cold today now is what. Daniel Bryan's yes is still going on. It's still strong. It's actually lasted longer than Stone Cold's hell yeah. It is still being said today. Whenever Stone Cold is in the ring, no one says hell yeah anymore. They say what. That is their go-to catchphrase. Yes movement is still going on even when Daniel Bryan's not competing.
Go ahead, Harley.
As much as I like the yes movement and the fact that it's not original at all, Daniel Bryan himself credits Diego Sanchez for it in UFC. But hell yeah, yes, Austin's been creative. He's been able to come up with several different catchphrases. Oh hell yeah was a huge catchphrase that he would get.
All right, final 10 seconds. This is very important. It's going to determine who moves on. Make the 10 seconds count. Richard, whenever you're ready.
Hell yeah is not original. People were saying hell yeah before even Stone Cold was saying it. Saying that yes is not original. It is very original for Daniel Bryan. He may have got inspiration, but Daniel Bryan made yes its own. He started the yes movement. People are still saying it today. And at any time when everyone's doing a match, yes.
Go ahead, Harley.
Yeah. When it comes to wrestling chants, hell yeah is more original than UFC chant from Diego Sanchez, which Daniel, like I said, Daniel Bryan saw him using it and got permission.
All right.
This was fun. Good job, Harley. This was a fun match for both of us. I wish you the best of luck.
No, that was tough.
So
I still got to work 8 hours.
So it's all going to come down to the judges. We're going to start with Malcolm on this. Malcolm, where do you stand on this final speed round question?
I'm going to go with Richard on this because he brought up some really good points about how the yes movement has defined Daniel Bryan, as how it sort of became his catchphrase, and he also brought up the fact that with Stone Cold, the catchphrase he's more known for is what, not hell yeah.
All right. So Malcolm has sided with Richard. Let's go to Ryan next. Ryan, do you agree?
I mean, I gotta be honest. This is not meant for a speed round. This feels like a debate question because there's just so much meat here. Ultimately, yeah, I agree with Malcolm. I'm going with Richard here, mainly because as an Austin fan, I do remember when Hell Yeah was big, but then when What took over, yeah, it was not only associated with Stone Cold, but it became something that was a part of Stone Cold's legacy. So whenever he did come back, everyone would always go, what? It would take Stone Cold having to do his Austin 316 line or give me a hell yeah for people to say hell yeah. And it's unfortunate though, but at the same time, it still was something that is associated with Austin. On the other hand, the Daniel Bryan, he did yes way before the yes movement those, but it became so much more powerful because of the storyline that was associated with Daniel Bryan doing yes. And As much as, and even though now Daniel Bryan doing his heel turn, now maybe people still chant yes, even when he refuses to do that, even when he doesn't do no. The fact that the fact that yes is so much more powerful, even despite Daniel Bryan's heel turn, is why I'm going with Richard.
All right, so that will be the match right there. A very, very competitive match, well fought. Both players I felt deserved to win, but unfortunately, Richard has come out victorious. So let's go into a little bit of post-match interviews. Richard, let's start with you. You had to fight your tail off to get to this, but how does it feel knowing that you're now one match away from potentially becoming a wrestling debate champion?
I feel, first of all, congrats to Harley. She put up a hell of a fight. This was a scary ass match. She played up a hell of a fight. We both put up a fight. It was never like clearly a one-way street. We both fought it out. I am excited that I came up victorious. It was a close, hard-fought match. I'm looking forward to taking on for the belt. I'm going to do my best. And once again, Harley, you played your hell out. It could have gone either way. So thank you for the match. It was awesome.
Well said by our victor. Unfortunately, we now have to go to our non-victor. Harley, nothing to hang your hat on. This is a very, very fun, competitive fight back and forth. Even though not victorious, what things can you take from this that can help you move forward?
Yeah, no, first I do definitely want to congratulate Richard on his win. Like that, those questions were tough. Most of those questions were tough. I thought for sure I had the Midnight Express in the bag. Like, just a little disappointed that like the fact that the Midnight Express was the top act, and wherever they went, like the main event, like at that point was not factored in with the judges. That kind of hurt me. Yeah. What I can take away is like those questions were like they were difficult to try to come up with answers for, and the speed round. I thought for sure I had it but then you added 2 words or less. I was about to say, "Do you smell what the Rock is cooking?" But then you mentioned 2 words or less, and I would
Just curious, if you had to do it over again, would you pick a different one, or would you have stuck with what you had?
When it comes to all the questions, or
just the speed round?
The speed round. I was somewhat thinking of what, but of course, like as a massive Steve Austin fan, there is that. But I would have gone with Austin 316. Would that? Just wondering if that would that have qualified, because it's a name and a time base. It is
probably a good thing you didn't pick that one, because that would have been. But yeah. So where do you think you can go from here? Now, unfortunately, you're no longer in the tournament.
Unfortunately, it's very hard to tell because the stuff's being recorded well before anything gets uploaded. So I haven't had a chance to see any other matches. So, in all honesty, I'm not too sure, just because like I don't really know the competition. Haven't had a chance to see it, but unlike movie debating, wrestling, I'm more confident and I feel I'm more qualified for. So, yeah, I definitely would like to stick around in the Chokeslam debating, because it is fun, and of course I love just researching stuff, like going back and unfortunately I couldn't find my Midnight Express 25th anniversary book. But which that would have just actually getting some gate figures and everything like that, because Cornette keeps awesome records. But so, I did rely on Dave Meltzer's bio when they were inducted into the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame for there. And it's just like I'm a huge Wrestling Observer fan, and it's just like And in my opinion, when it comes to knowledgeable, Dave Meltzer is without a doubt one of the most knowledgeable people. And I know this is pre-recorded a long time ago. I just want to give just a little rest in peace to one of the greatest of all time when it comes to stepping foot in the ring. And for today, I'll go. I'm proud to call myself Harley, the great Harley Race. Like, rest in peace, buddy. Like, you were without doubt one of the best. Like, hope you're looking down on everyone.
Well said. So, with that said, we're gonna close shop here, wrap this up. Want to thank my fellow two judges who took part in this. But let's go into our sign outs and where everybody can find it. Let's go back to Richard. Where can the good people find you on social media and all that good stuff?
They can find me on Facebook under Richard Schwartz. You can find me on YouTube and Twitter under External Void, where I do WWE Champions mobile gaming. And you can find me driving around LA because I got nothing better else to do.
And I don't know how you drive out there in LA. I've been out there a couple times, and it is treacherous.
Born and raised, used to it.
Yeah. Bargain Bill's Flea Market, definitely not used to it. Let's go to Harley. Harley, where can the good people find you?
Of course, you can find me on Facebook at Harley Boric. I'm friends with several people within this community. It definitely helps out. Also, of course, you can find me over at Combat Wrestling Trivia, where I help out doing various different things over there. And of course, I'm the editor for Full Metal Geek. And of course, like I said, we're pre-taping, so I can't give out a schedule of where we're coming up for upcoming matches, unfortunately. But also, yeah, you can just hopefully you can also find me over here at Chokeslam if you guys need any judges or anything like that. Now that I'm out of the tournament and I should be free to help judge, I'd actually love to try my hand at that. I think it would be really, really interesting.
Alrighty, so now let's go to our other judges. Let's go to Ryan, who surprisingly is not at a Starbucks this time. Ryan, where can the good people find you?
Well, you definitely won't be finding me at Starbucks. But you will find me on Facebook under Ryan Payne. Look for me on any Jack of all trivia. I don't know when it will be released, but I have a championship match. I have a championship match in the wrestling trivia section, so I can't wait for that to come out. And also, whenever new episodes, I'm a frequent guest on the Pro Wrestling Broadcast. Whenever a new episode comes out, I'll most likely be promoting it.
Also, in a quick side note, I actually saw Ryan Payne at the Comic-Con live show and actually plugged him in my Schmodown reaction. Don't know if he ever saw that, but just wanted to bring that up now.
I had people tell me it, so I have all of them saved on a Q section of my YouTube.
Now let's go to the man that made this all happen tonight, Mr. Malcolm Goldie Lay, the admin, the webmaster, if you will. Where can the good people find you when you're not running these wonderful streams here on StreamYard? I believe I just plugged them.
You can find me hosting Rankum on Take 3 every Sunday nights. You can find me hosting Full Metal Random on the Full Metal Trivia channel, competing in various leagues on Multiplex, Full Metal, Combat Zone Wrestling, all the good places. And you can find me on Twitter, Leadbox, and Stardust at Malcolm, and also hosting Late TV Fights, the TV debate portion of TMG Entertainment. So that will be a lot of fun.
Well said, and all the good people can find me on Twitter at WWEJTH1. You can find me on Jeremy Hastings on Facebook, and that's pretty much it. Also, my own YouTube channel, JTH, where I do my Schmodown reactions and all that good stuff. But on behalf of our great panel here tonight, thank you for tuning in for this episode of the Chokeslam Wrestling Debate. On behalf of everyone, I am JTH. Thank you for watching, and we all bid you adieu.